I stole away from my parents for a few, shopping in the feed store for some grain for old Bessie, the milk cow. I was just a-walking along, looking at the buildings, standing in the middle of town, and I heard me some music. Well, you know, I was a curious feller, always getting into something or another, and I thought I'd have me some figuring to do. Who was playing that tune? Sure enough, there was 3 men playing a song sounding so familiar. And then there was the fiddler, a young man, probably not any older than 19, just a-sliding and a-slurring that bow across them strings. Yeah, if my memory serves me right, I believe they were playing a little Sleepy Lou. I watched till the song was done, backed round the corner, found Mama and Dad looking every which way for me. Well, I ran on along over to 'em. Course they threatened to raw my hide just like every other time I disappeared, but they never did. Suppose I was lucky enough to be in town, in public. Not that I wouldn't get whipped here, but they didn't care much for public spankings. It was about a year later. Uncle Henry was over at the house visiting, had his fiddle out picking and a-strumming on the strings between storytelling and a few sips of that ruckus juice he always kept hidden on the inside of his jacket pocket. I got to sit around and listen, long as I didn't ask no questions or try getting involved in any grown-up business. It was getting to be dark, the sun setting and all, when there was lots of commotion going on outside. Dad and Uncle Henry went on outside to see what was going on. I stood, looking from the front door, trying to hear some of what they was saying. Something about some wild panther spotted at the Flam's place. Well, Dad and Uncle Henry ran back in, grabbed the shotguns, and left. Knowing they'd be gone for some time, I grabbed me up that fiddle, started picking the strings, just like I heard old Unc Henry doing. I'd started to figure out the notes to that devilish Mary tune. I picked and I picked, not sounding a bit like Uncle Henry. I was long gone and a-dreaming, for they came back home, the fiddle just sitting just like Uncle Henry had left it. It wasn't long for I started sneaking off to Unc Henry's house every chance I got, rushing through my chores just to get 'em done. I'd run over there, seeing if I was lucky enough to catch him playing. Well, old Unc Henry must have picked up on my interest, and he handed me that fiddle, put it right in my hands and said, "Why don't you give it a try?" After a few, he pulled it from my hands, showing me some notes and bowings to Mississippi Sawyer. After only a short time of my fiddle encounters, Daddy caught me red-handed, working on one of them old songs I was trying. Believe it might have been Finley Creek Blues. Anyhow, all he said was, "You know, son, a fiddler will never be worth a damn." After that, I never heard one word from him, long as my chores was done. In fact, it was Dad who bought me my first fiddle. Happened to be Uncle Henry's after he was done gone on. 1 week after Christmas, he handed me that old fiddle and never said one word about it, good or bad.
Glen Rickman entered the Army at a young age. He met his wife, Shorty, in Washington State, where they were married and then returned to the Ozarks. Glen and Shorty Rickman lived most of their adult life in Crane, Missouri, where they raised their 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl. Glen's passion for music was not his only known hobby. He also had a love for trains. When he was a little boy, Glen would sit and watch the trains run. He became an engineer and worked for the Missouri Pacific Railroad for almost 40 years, before retiring in 1968 because of his eyesight, which had been affected by staring in the fireboxes while working on the trains. Family stories suggest he had attempted to have laser eye surgery during the early experimental stages of the medical procedure, which left him permanently blind. Friends and family said that his lack of vision did not affect his music. In fact, some members attributed his increased playing to his blindness. Glen played frequently for friends and family and by request. He was a very social, well-liked gentleman, and one heck of a storyteller. One fond memory told by many people who knew Glen was about a department store in the town of Crane. Every January 8th, Glen would call and play the 8th of January, and the workers would put him on speaker for the whole store to enjoy. Glen Rickman lived a full life and passed away in 1982. According to family and friends, the funeral was packed with people, all of whom had been impacted by the life and music of Glen Rickman. The service ended as the preacher pronounced, "There must be some fiddling going on in heaven tonight."